Good morning. Welcome to another day at Air Cool Performance. So this is another part of the series of the 47EL Knucklehead that we're working on. Wanted to show you guys what we found so far. One thing real quick is we'll go with flywheel identification. When you're looking at a knucklehead flywheel, any overhead valve flywheel, your lock pin screw is always going to be at the 12 o'clock position. Your side valve motors, the lock pin screw hole will be over here. So if you're looking at flywheels at a swap meet, if you see that your lock pin screw is at 12 o'clock, you know that's for overhead valve motor. Another thing is the overhead valve motors have got the advance mark, and this is your top dead center. To give you an idea, you know, Harley's running at 35 degrees advance when they're on full advance. So we're going to take a degree wheel here, and we'll do another video on how to degree cams later. But if you'll look, even though this is not real accurate, we got our zero lined up with here with our top dead center. And if we go over here, we'll see we're right at about 34 to 35 degrees full advance. So that's where your advanced timing mark comes into play. And that's you know, the thing on it using a degree wheel is you can't always trust what your cam specifications and stuff like that are from the manufacturer. You want to be able to trust it, but we have seen instances where that's not always so. So you don't ever want to take a chance with that. It only takes a short amount of time to degree your cams, and we'll go through that in another video, but just letting you know what's going on there. So getting back to the flywheels, the big difference, like I said, in your overhead valve and your side valve flywheels is the placement of the lock tab screw hole, and also your timing mark is going to be just a little bit different on the side valve than it is here. And if you look at the motor, you'll see why. You know, on a big twin, you know, your distributor is to the front, like where the front cylinder is. And if you look at a big flatty, your distributor's kind of like in the middle, like a 45. And also your side valve flywheels are not going to have this advance mark. So that's a couple things to look for. And right here, this gusset on a side valve flywheel is going to be about twice the size as this here, as far as this distance right here. So you want to look at that. And then also your side valve flywheels are about 3/16 of an inch smaller in diameter than your overhead valve flywheels. And some of the old timers used to use that because of, you know, you've got a smaller flywheel, it's going to spin up a little quicker and all. But thing about that is you have to weld up the scraper, because if not, you're going to have oil drag on the rim of the flywheels and you're not going to really realize anything. So bottom line, use the flywheels that go with the motor. End of story. So now what we want to look at too is, if you look right here, see if you can see how eat up this sprocket shaft is. If you remember, we had an excessive amount of end play. And what establishes that end play are these washers right here. You see the little hole right there? That registers on that pin, and when this is on the shaft and is in place on that pin, then that is what establishes the amount of end play you have on either side of your flywheels. So, and you can see that there's a fair amount of scoring on this as well. But what we're looking at here too, if you look, see how that sprocket shaft is eat up right there. I don't know if you can you see what that is the thickness of that. There's two sets of bearings here, and that is the thickness of that outer bearing, and you can see it's pretty much just eat into that sprocket shaft. So this sprocket shaft is junk, it's no good. And another thing these guys did, which is unnecessary, if you look here, you've got the crank pin nut lock here, and then on some of the newer motors we don't even use these. But anyway, the crank pin nut lock is here, and if you notice, they have actually staked the crank pin. See those stake marks? To try to keep from the nut backing off. And so they have initially trashed that crank pin. Even if it was rebuildable, we will not use that crank pin. And if you look over here on this side, this is the pinion shaft. This is not terrible bad. We may end up using that, but if you see, there's a little bit of marking where the bearing sets have run on that. More than likely, I'll go ahead and look and see if I've got one. I'm going to go ahead and put a new one in there. And the same way with this side, those flywheel washers go here, and they register on this little nib right here that keeps them from spinning. And that's what sets up your end play in your crankshaft on the early motors, and that's up until about 53, I think. After that, they don't use this type of setup. They don't have the little nibs on. But so anyway, that's where we are. And of course, you know, the rods are going to have to be rebuilt. But the flywheels, as far as, you know, a lot of times you'll see flywheels that's got all kind of beating and banging and carrying on. And another thing that you'll notice, if you look close, these things are unbalanced. I mean, there is no balance drillings in this flywheel whatsoever. A lot of times you'll see on the inside rim there'll be different holes to where they've had to allow for the weight, for the balance factor, or sometimes even on the outside you'll see that. But we will definitely check that because you know, I use S&S balance equipment, and we balance every motor that we build, because even if it's stock, it just makes a big difference in the way they run. So anyway, this is just an update on what's going on with the knuckle. Thought you guys might like to see it, and we'll bring you up to speed on more as we do more. God bless America and air-cooled performance. We keep your stuff running.